Hey friends, today we're going to learn about how to use chords without color tones, which are particularly useful in backup and bluegrass, so you don't get in the way of the vocalist or the lead player. Color tones are the sounds in the chord that draw your ear the most. So in a G chord, in any given major chord I should say, we'll just use the G chord as our example, one of the color tones is the third, the B, which is where a lot of the melody would lie in a traditional bluegrass song. So you hear a lot of melodic inference there, which is all great whenever you're playing a melody or playing a solo. But when it's your time to back up and be the accompanist, you want to stay out of the way of those, the other people who are doing that. So basically what we're going to do is learn how to play chords without the color tone, the B in it, or another color tone that's particularly powerful in bluegrass is the seventh, which is to say this sound. So you hear that a lot, especially in the context of, say, bluesy type things. But again, your ear is very much drawn to that. Whereas the root note, the G, and the fifth kind of occupy their own space and they stay well out of the way. So if I were to play this chord, it's just G's and D's. So G, G, D, D, and then a G again. So you don't know if that chord is minor or major. And that's the idea, is that it doesn't have any color tone bringing your ear to it one way or the other. So you're not hearing this, and you're not hearing this, and you're not hearing this one way or the other. So if we were playing backup in our bluegrass band, you'd want to stay out of the way of that string. So if you did that at G and D, you can pretty much stay within the confines of the first string, there's your fifth, the middle string, there's your root, the one, and then the fifth string, which is also your root note, but an octave higher. So let's say we were playing backup and it went something like this. So right hand wise, I'm just keeping my right hand, these three fingers on those three strings. I'm not touching this string. So you can always slide into it for a little bit of flair. But for the most part, you're going to ride this. A lot of times it's just a forward roll. And that keeps the drive going. If you were to look at that on a tab, everything would look like it's slanting forward as it moves through. And so that's sort of the idea behind what you're doing, is that you're trying to keep things moving forward, you're trying to drive it, but you're not trying to distract from whatever the melodic information is. So in G, you could do it like that, mostly staying out of the way, mostly open strings. In D, it sort of applies the same way. So here's our D chord. Here are your thirds. So if we take away the bottom one, then you get the root. But you still have this one, and that's definitely drawing your ear towards it. So we want to get rid of it, because that's also a D, and that's a D, which makes this one a D. And there's your fifth, the A. So we don't even really need this to be there if you're just going to keep your fingers on the fourth, the third, and the first string to play that. So, like I said, there's nothing to draw your ear towards any color tones whatsoever. It's just essentially a power chord. Now, what you do with your right hand depends on what the song calls for. In traditional bluegrass songs, like Blue Ridge Cabin Home, for example, you'll probably keep everything to basic forward rolls just to drive the tune along. But if it's something a little jazzier, you may want to mix up your right hand technique, in which case you may also change the shape of your left hand to incorporate more fingers on the strings, but also less color tones. You're still not playing the color tone. So for example, if I went back to this shape on my D chord, again, I'm avoiding the fifth string, not going to touch that one. I'm just going to keep it to these four. Could be a way to do it. Now I could mix up my right hand and have like a... And that adds kind of a cool color to it. It also adds a little bit of drive, but it also doesn't distract because there's no major or minor third or seventh in there. Same thing can be done with G. I'm going to add more of the chord back with my fingers, specifically my index finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string and my ring finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string, so it sounds like. So I'm just kind of rolling it like that, so you get a lot of the bass note. Now, you could totally change that up to add the upper octave of the chord, and it gives you an opportunity to very carefully add in the 7th, which could be a cool effect if you're trying to drive things along a bit. Sort of like how we slid from here. You can do something like that here. So basically I have my index finger on the 5th fret of the 4th string, which is G, my ring finger on the 7th fret of the 3rd string, which is D. There's your power chord. And I'm going to plant my middle finger on the 6th fret of the 2nd string, but just keep it there, while my pinky is out here on the 8th fret of the 2nd string. So we end up with this, and I can use the same roll pattern that I did with D a minute ago. Let's say I wanted to add that 7th. So I'm going. And that adds a little bit of color. It's not as distracting. It does add a color tone to the mix, but only in the sense that you're leading back to the root note. So we're trying to keep everything more or less like this. And because this is a closed shape, it can be moved anywhere. You move it up. And again, all we're doing is trying to get back to that. So it serves more like a hammer-on into that, the same way we did the slide in the other open version of it. This works across the board, especially in the closed shape, if you really need there to be less color. And that definitely helps some songs because, again, you're just trying to stay out of the way of the melodic information when it's not your turn. But the more you experiment with that and try to drive, less emphasis on anything melodic and more emphasis on your rhythm, you'll find different ways to incorporate this in backup, and it can really, really enhance the entire song in the service of the song, rather than draw attention to what you're doing. And it really helps whatever's going on mainly. So try a couple of these power chord tricks and see if you can enhance the drive of the tune, because ultimately you're trying to stay in the pocket, and it's all about the groove. And that's what's really important in a lot of this music, is that it grooves.